Stop for a second before you continue. Do not rush past this moment. Pay attention to the feeling that has been following you lately, the one that seems impossible to describe, yet refuses to disappear. Perhaps it has shown up as a quiet tension beneath your everyday thoughts, a persistent sensation that something important is moving beneath the surface of your life. Maybe it feels like anticipation without a visible cause, or like standing at the edge of a doorway you cannot yet see, but somehow know is there. Whatever form it has taken, it has not appeared without purpose. This is not simply another message crossing your path, and it is not just another video competing for your attention. There is a reason your awareness landed here at this exact moment. Even if the analytical part of your mind searches for explanations, another part of you already understands. Something deeper has been guiding you, nudging you through a series of experiences, signs, interruptions, and realizations that have quietly led you to this point. Throughout this entire year, communication has been unfolding around you in ways that were easy to overlook. It did not always arrive through obvious answers or direct revelations. Instead, it appeared through repeating circumstances, through unexpected detours, through moments that lingered in your memory long after they should have faded. Certain events seemed strangely significant even when they made no logical sense. Certain encounters carried an emotional weight that was difficult to explain. Certain disruptions forced you to stop and reconsider directions you once believed were fixed. Looking back now, you may begin to recognize that these experiences were never isolated incidents. They were pieces of a much larger design, fragments of a message slowly assembling itself until everything could finally come together. And now that convergence is arriving, what emerges on June 21st during the summer solstice is not merely an idea, a metaphor, or a distant possibility. It is the point where countless threads begin connecting into a single picture. It is the instant when feelings that once seemed confusing start revealing their purpose. What you sensed without understanding begins stepping into focus. What felt hidden starts becoming visible. The pressure, the anticipation, the growing awareness that something was approaching was never an illusion. It was preparation. Yet it is important to recognize that this message will not resonate with everyone. Many people will hear these words and move on without feeling anything. Others may dismiss what they cannot immediately explain, but there are those who will feel something awaken the moment they hear this. There are those identified as the 144,000, individuals whose preparation has unfolded away from public recognition, away from applause, away from external validation. Their journey has been largely invisible. Their greatest transformations have occurred behind closed doors, within private battles no one else fully witnessed. They have learned how to continue forward through uncertainty. They have learned how to trust themselves when no evidence seemed available. Most importantly, they have developed the ability to sense change before it becomes visible in the external world. If you are still here, still listening, still feeling that subtle pull growing stronger rather than weaker, then you may already recognize this experience. You may understand what it feels like to know something is coming long before it arrives. You may have spent months trying to explain sensations that language could never fully capture. Deep inside, you know there is a reason these words found you. Deep inside, you know this moment is not accidental, and the realization of that truth may become the beginning of a profound turning point. Some days drift quietly through existence. They arrive, they pass, and they leave little trace behind. But every so often, a day emerges that seems to alter the direction of everything around it. June 21st carries that quality. While many recognize it simply as the longest day of the year, there is another dimension to its significance. It represents a pause within motion itself, a moment where the constant momentum of life appears to slow just enough for something deeper to become visible. It feels like a threshold suspended between one phase and the next, a space where what has been gathering beneath the surface reaches a point of concentration, a space where unseen forces seem to collect themselves before movement resumes. Long before this date arrived, you were already responding to its approach. The evidence was hidden within your experiences, perhaps plans stalled unexpectedly, perhaps situations that once felt clear became clouded with uncertainty. Perhaps you found yourself withdrawing from people, environments, or routines that previously felt familiar. There may have been moments when you questioned your own direction, moments when it seemed as if your life was drifting further away from alignment rather than closer to it. The temptation was to believe something had gone wrong. The temptation was to interpret every delay as failure and every disruption as evidence that you had lost your way. But another reality was operating beneath the surface. What appeared to be disorder was actually rearrangement. What appeared to be confusion was actually positioning. Every interruption, every unexpected detour, every shift that forced you away from old expectations was gradually guiding you toward this precise intersection in time. Nothing was random. Nothing occurred without purpose. The path was being adjusted long before you could recognize where it was leading. Not everyone around you will understand this process, and that is perfectly natural. There is no obligation to defend what you feel or justify what you know. The truth is that understanding arrives differently for different people. The 144,000 are not distinguished by social status, public recognition, achievement, or approval from the outside world. Their defining characteristic is something far less visible. It is their ability to maintain a certain inner frequency even while external circumstances become unstable. It is their capacity to continue moving forward despite exhaustion, uncertainty, and challenges that remain largely unseen by others. And those challenges have shaped you more than you realize. There have been moments when isolation felt overwhelming. Moments when doubt entered your mind and made you question your purpose, your direction, and even your own identity. There were seasons when the road ahead seemed impossible to read. Yet those experiences were never meaningless. They were part of a preparation process. Growth of this magnitude was never intended to be comfortable. It required pressure. It required endurance. It required circumstances that would strengthen qualities within you that could not develop under easier conditions. Every obstacle refined something important. Every test revealed hidden strengths. Every difficult chapter moved you closer to becoming the version of yourself capable of standing within this moment. Because what is unfolding now requires someone who has already been transformed by challenge. It requires someone who has learned resilience through experience rather than theory. And when you look back across the past year, without criticism, without regret, and without the need to rewrite what happened, a larger pattern begins revealing itself. You start to notice that the things which dissolved were never truly meant to remain. Relationships shifted because they had completed their purpose. Connections faded because they could no longer support where you were heading. Opportunities disappeared because they belonged to a version of your path that was already changing. What seemed like loss was often recalibration. What seemed like an ending was often preparation for what comes next. And as this realization settles into your awareness, the deeper meaning of everything you have experienced begins to emerge with greater clarity. There is a truth hidden beneath everything you have experienced recently. And if you miss it, you may continue viewing this chapter through the lens of loss, instead of understanding what was actually taking place. At first glance, it may have appeared as though pieces of your life were becoming unstable for no clear reason. Certain situations unraveled, certain expectations dissolved, certain structures you once depended upon seemed unable to support you any longer. Naturally, the human mind interprets these experiences as setbacks. It sees endings and assumes something valuable has been taken away. It sees uncertainty and assumes something has gone wrong. Yet beneath the surface, a far more deliberate process was unfolding. What felt like destruction was often refinement. What felt like rejection was often redirection. Forces beyond your immediate awareness were gradually removing what could no longer accompany you into the next phase of your journey. Energies that once matched who you were no longer matched who you were becoming. Attachments connected to older versions of yourself had reached their natural conclusion. The separation was not punishment. It was preparation. The path ahead demanded a level of authenticity that could not exist alongside outdated patterns, false identities, or circumstances rooted in a past chapter that had already fulfilled its purpose. The future waiting for you requires a different level of clarity. It requires alignment with truth rather than comfort. It requires the courage to release what is familiar in order to embrace what is real. That is why so much has been rearranged. That is why delays persisted until the timing was right. And now, As this energetic threshold begins to reveal itself, the season of waiting is drawing to a close. The foundations that were quietly constructed beyond your awareness are no longer remaining hidden. What has been forming in silence is preparing to step into visibility. Long before this moment arrived, your inner world had already begun responding to it. If you think carefully about the months behind you, you may recognize signs that once seemed impossible to explain. There were periods when a strange restlessness followed you everywhere. No achievement felt satisfying for long. No routine felt completely right. No familiar environment seemed capable of holding your attention the way it once did. It was as if some invisible force kept whispering that something needed to change, even though you could not identify exactly what that change was. Then there were other moments that felt completely different. Sudden exhaustion would settle over you without warning. Motivation disappeared. Energy fluctuated unpredictably. Yet just when everything seemed clouded, unexpected insight would arrive. A realization would appear. A piece of understanding would suddenly make sense. These experiences were not meaningless, emotional fluctuations. They were indications that a deeper adjustment was taking place. Your entire system was responding to an approaching shift. As your frequency evolved, every layer of your being began adapting. The body often experiences these transitions physically, through fatigue, tension, or sensitivity. The mind attempts to interpret what is happening through logic and analysis, searching for explanations it can comfortably understand. Yet the soul functions differently. The soul does not require proof before recognition. It does not wait for evidence before understanding. It recognizes truth through resonance. It feels what is emerging long before the conscious mind can articulate it. And throughout this entire process, your soul has been serving as a quiet guide, steering you toward this moment through instincts, intuitions, and inner knowing that frequently defied rational explanation. Now there is a realization that has the power to transform the way you understand everything that is happening. Many people spend their lives searching outside themselves for the doorway that will change their reality. They imagined it exists somewhere distant, hidden within a future event, a special location, or a circumstance that has yet to arrive. Yet the portal you have been sensing has never existed outside of you. It has never been waiting in some unreachable destination. It has never been suspended somewhere beyond your grasp. The doorway is internal. The summer solstice does not create a passage in the external world. Instead, it ignites a passage within consciousness itself. It awakens a deeper level of perception. It reactivates awareness that has always existed beneath layers of conditioning, expectation, distraction, and noise. In many ways, this moment is less about becoming someone new and more about remembering who you have always been underneath, everything that convinced you otherwise. When this internal activation begins, the effects ripple through every area of life. The way you interpret events changes. The way you understand your purpose changes. The way you view challenges, relationships, opportunities, and even your own identity begins transforming. Suddenly, experiences that once seemed disconnected reveal hidden connections. Situations that once felt unfair reveal deeper meaning. Paths that appeared blocked reveal themselves as protection rather than punishment. This shift in awareness alters your relationship with reality itself, and once this level of recognition arrives, it cannot simply be undone. There is no returning to complete unconsciousness after seeing what was previously hidden. There is no forgetting what has been remembered. The version of you that existed before this awakening gradually becomes a memory, because awareness changes the observer, and once the observer changes, everything observed changes as well. Yet there is another part of this process that deserves attention because it is often misunderstood. Just before expansion, fear frequently becomes louder. Just before understanding arrives, uncertainty often intensifies. Just before someone steps fully into their power, they may experience a period where everything feels unstable and difficult to trust. If recent weeks or months have left you feeling disconnected, emotionally overwhelmed, or uncertain about where you are headed, do not immediately assume something is wrong. Many people mistake these experiences for evidence that they have drifted away from their purpose when the opposite may be true. Often these feelings emerge because you are standing directly in front of a major transition. The closer you move toward alignment, the more resistance can seem to appear. Doubt begins questioning every decision. Fear begins magnifying every risk. Old habits attempt to reclaim familiar territory. The mind searches for reasons to retreat into what feels safe, yet this resistance is not necessarily an obstacle. Very often, it is an indicator. It signals proximity to breakthrough. It announces that you are approaching the final threshold before a profound shift becomes fully anchored into your experience. This is the moment when different paths begin revealing themselves more clearly. Some individuals will sense the invitation and immediately turn away from it. They will choose familiarity over transformation. They will return to distractions, routines, and patterns that allow them to avoid the discomfort of growth. Others, however, will recognize something undeniable moving within them, not because someone else confirmed it, not because external circumstances provided proof, but because a deep certainty emerges from within, steady and impossible to ignore. This certainty does not depend on approval. It does not require validation. It exists as an inner knowing that remains present, even when questions remain unanswered. Those who trust that knowing despite uncertainty begin aligning themselves with the path that truly belongs to them. They begin stepping into the purpose that has been calling them all along. Not because every fear has disappeared, not because every detail has been revealed, but because they finally understand a truth that changes everything. Readiness has never been the deciding factor. The invitation itself is, and those who answer that invitation become the ones who move forward into the next chapter of their destiny. Chosen one, there is something important happening beneath the surface of your awareness right now, and whether you can fully explain it or not does not change the fact that it is already underway. For a long time, every experience, every challenge, every unexpected turn has been guiding you toward this threshold. What once felt like isolated events are beginning to reveal themselves as connected pieces of a much larger process. And now you stand at the point where movement becomes transformation. This is where the internal shift you have been sensing starts becoming impossible to ignore. Yet what unfolds first may not feel dramatic or triumphant. In fact, it may feel strangely unfamiliar. You may notice parts of yourself beginning to loosen and fade. Beliefs you once defended without hesitation may no longer feel completely true. Habits that once provided comfort may suddenly feel restrictive. Desires that once motivated you may lose their emotional grip. At first, this can create confusion because the mind naturally wants consistency. It wants to know who it is. It wants to hold on to definitions that have provided stability. But what is happening is not a crisis of identity. It is the gradual release of an identity that has completed its purpose. For years, perhaps without realizing it, you built a version of yourself from the circumstances you survived. You adapted to expectations. You responded to disappointments. You learned lessons from rejection, uncertainty, and struggle. Layer by layer, an identity formed around those experiences. That identity served an important function. It protected you. It helped you navigate a particular chapter of your journey. But now a new chapter is opening, and the version of you that was designed for the previous one cannot fully accompany you into what comes next. This is why certain thoughts feel outdated. This is why old emotional reactions no longer fit. This is why some parts of your former self seem to be drifting into the distance like memories from another lifetime. Nothing valuable is being taken away. What is occurring is a process of release. You are shedding what was necessary for yesterday so you can embody what is required for tomorrow. There may be moments during this transition when you feel suspended between two worlds. One part of you recognizes that the past no longer reflects who you are becoming, yet the future has not completely settled into form. This creates an in-between state that many people find uncomfortable. The mind wants immediate certainty. It wants clear answers. It wants to know exactly where it is going before it takes the next step. Yet transformation rarely unfolds that way. There is often a sacred period where old structures dissolve before new ones fully emerge. During this period, it can feel as though you are standing on a bridge surrounded by fog. You know you cannot return to where you came from, but you cannot yet see the entire landscape ahead. If this is where you find yourself, understand that nothing has gone wrong. This space is not evidence of failure, it is evidence of growth. It is the place where your most authentic self begins revealing itself without the filters, expectations, and limitations that once defined your experience. As this process deepens, another change often begins to unfold. External noise gradually loses its hold over you. Conversations that once captured your attention may no longer feel meaningful. Environments that once felt comfortable may begin feeling energetically heavy. Activities that once filled your time may seem strangely empty. You may even find yourself craving solitude in ways that surprise you. Not because you dislike others, and not because you're always drawing from life, but because something deeper within you is asking for space. The world grows quieter, so you can hear what has been speaking beneath the noise all along. Many people misunderstand this stage and interpret it as loneliness. Yet there is a profound difference between loneliness and alignment. Loneliness feels disconnected from yourself. Alignment draws you closer to yourself. What is occurring now is not abandonment, it is recalibration. Within this quieter space, remarkable things begin happening. Insights emerge without force. Patterns become visible. Connections between past experiences suddenly make sense. Events that once appeared random reveal deeper meaning. You start recognizing cycles that have repeated throughout your life. You begin understanding why certain lessons kept returning. You see how particular challenges shape strengths you never knew you possessed. The silence becomes a mirror reflecting truths that were always present but previously hidden beneath distraction. And the more willing you are to remain present with that silence, the more clearly those truths reveal themselves. What initially seemed empty becomes filled with understanding. What initially felt uncertain becomes illuminated by awareness. The revelations waiting there cannot be rushed. They can only be received. As your awareness continues expanding, another experience may begin emerging, one that feels both mysterious and strangely familiar. Certain symbols, ideas, teachings, or forms of knowledge may suddenly resonate with unusual intensity. You encounter something and immediately feel connected to it, despite having no logical explanation for why. There is a sense of recognition that seems to come from somewhere deeper than memory. It feels less like learning and more like remembering, less like discovering and more like reconnecting. The experience carries a familiarity that bypasses analysis and goes straight to the soul. For the 144,000, this awakening of encoded awareness is a significant part of the process. It emerges when the timing aligns. It activates when preparation has reached a certain stage, and what once felt distant now feels immediate. What once seemed hidden now begins stepping into view. When these moments of recognition arrive, there can be a temptation to dismiss them. The analytical mind may search for alternative explanations. Doubt may attempt to reduce the experience into something smaller and more manageable. Yet the deeper part of you knows the difference between imagination and resonance. It knows the difference between fantasy and truth. This awakening is not asking you to abandon reason. It is asking you to trust the wisdom that exists alongside reason, the wisdom that has guided you through every major turning point of your life, the wisdom that often knew the answer before your mind could explain it. As this activation strengthens, its effects become increasingly noticeable. Energy moves differently through your experience. Your emotional responses become more precise. Your awareness of people, environments, and situations sharpens. You may find yourself reacting more strongly to energies that feel out of alignment. Places that once seemed neutral may suddenly feel draining. Interactions that once felt acceptable may now feel exhausting. At the same time, experiences that genuinely resonate with your truth may feel more powerful than ever before. This heightened sensitivity is often misunderstood. Some view it as vulnerability, others mistake it for weakness. In reality, it reflects refinement. Your internal system is becoming more accurate, more responsive, more capable of distinguishing what supports your growth from what hinders it. Because of this refinement, life begins looking different. Priorities shift naturally. Goals evolve. Attachments lose their influence. You may notice yourself becoming less interested in chasing things that once seemed essential. Not because you've lost ambition, but because your definition of fulfillment is changing. External markers that once appeared important may no longer carry the same emotional weight. Paths you once pursued with determination may no longer inspire the same enthusiasm. This can feel unsettling if you expect purpose to remain static. Yet purpose is not static. It evolves as consciousness evolves. What is happening is not confusion. It is not drift. It is not the loss of direction, it is the realignment of your entire life around a deeper truth. And as this realignment continues unfolding, the next stage of your transformation begins preparing itself to emerge. What is unfolding now is far greater than simply changing a few habits or adopting a new perspective. At the deepest level, you are being invited to step out of a way of living that was built around automatic responses, inherited expectations, and roles that may never have truly reflected your authentic nature. For much of your journey, it may have seemed easier to follow established paths, to meet expectations placed upon you by circumstances, experiences, or the people around you. Yet something within you has been growing increasingly unwilling to continue living according to scripts that no longer match your inner truth. That growing discomfort was never a problem to solve. It was a signal. It was the first indication that your soul was preparing to lead where conditioning could no longer follow. This shift does not require you to abandon the world around you. In fact, it asks the opposite. It invites you to engage with life from a place of greater awareness. Rather than moving unconsciously through routines and obligations, you begin seeing them for what they truly are. You begin recognizing which choices belong to you and which were adopted simply because they seemed expected. You begin distinguishing between desires that emerge from your deepest self and desires shaped by external pressure. This new level of perception changes everything. The world remains the same, yet your relationship with it transforms. For the first time, you are no longer reacting automatically, you are choosing consciously. And that difference has the power to redirect an entire lifetime. As this process unfolds, you eventually arrive at a crossroads that appears deceptively simple. On the surface, it may seem like a small decision, yet internally it carries enormous significance. You are asked to continue forward without possessing complete certainty. The familiar guarantees you once depended upon may no longer be available. The path ahead may reveal only the next step rather than the entire destination. For many people, this is where hesitation appears. The mind becomes uncomfortable. Questions multiply. Doubt searches for evidence. Old fears attempt to convince you that movement should wait until every unknown has been resolved. Yet this moment exists for a reason. Transformation reaches a deeper level when certainty is no longer the foundation of action. Trust becomes the foundation instead. True trust is often misunderstood. Many believe trust appears only after proof arrives. Yet the most meaningful form of trust emerges before proof exists. It is the willingness to move despite unanswered questions. It is the courage to take the next step, even while portions of the journey remain hidden. It is the recognition that the same intelligence, energy, and guidance that carried you through every previous challenge has not suddenly disappeared. It remains present now. The force that orchestrated countless experiences to bring you to this point continues working in ways that may not yet be visible. When you choose trust over fear, something remarkable happens. Resistance begins loosening. Life flows differently. Opportunities arrive with greater ease. What once required struggle begins responding to alignment. As old layers continue falling away, a deeper understanding gradually emerges from within you. It does not arrive all at once. It does not descend as a complete blueprint explaining every detail of your future. Instead, it reveals itself through small but meaningful moments. A sudden realization, an unexpected attraction toward a particular direction, a growing sense of excitement around certain possibilities. A quiet inner certainty that pulls you toward one path while gently guiding you away from another. Slowly, what has always existed beneath the surface begins becoming visible. This is purpose revealing itself. Many people spend years searching for purpose as though it exists somewhere outside themselves, waiting to be discovered. Yet purpose rarely works that way. It is not a distant object to chase. It is an alignment to embody. It becomes visible when you stop forcing your life toward what is not meant for you and begin moving toward what naturally resonates with your authentic nature. The more closely you align with that resonance, the more life begins responding. New opportunities emerge, meaningful connections appear, unexpected pathways open. What once felt blocked starts moving. What once felt difficult starts flowing. From the outside, it may appear mysterious. Yet beneath the surface, there is a simple explanation. You are entering harmony with what you are genuinely meant to experience, create, and contribute. Eventually, Every awakening reaches a defining stage. It is the moment when you realize that returning to your previous state of awareness is no longer possible. Not because anyone prevents you from going back, but because you have already seen too much. You have felt too much. You have understood too much. The insights gained throughout this journey have altered the way you perceive yourself and your reality. For a brief time, you may attempt to reconnect with former versions of yourself. You may revisit familiar habits, familiar perspectives, or familiar ways of thinking, yet something will feel different. The connection will no longer be complete. The old identity no longer fits because growth has expanded beyond its boundaries. This realization can feel intense. It marks a threshold from which there is no meaningful retreat. Yet hidden within that intensity is confirmation. It confirms that the activation you have been sensing is genuine. It confirms that transformation is no longer approaching from a distance. It is happening now. You are no longer preparing for change. You are living within it. Every decision, every realization, and every step forward is becoming part of a new trajectory. A new timeline begins forming, one increasingly aligned with the truth of who you are becoming, rather than the limitations of who you once believed yourself to be. Then comes a particularly significant moment. It often arrives quietly. There may be no dramatic announcement, no visible signal, yet internally, something settles into place. The uncertainty that once surrounded every decision begins losing its influence, not because all questions have been answered, but because a deeper level of knowing has emerged. This is the point often described as timeline activation. It is the stage where your energy becomes so aligned with your direction that your path starts feeling inevitable. Challenges may still appear. Unexpected circumstances may still arise, moments of doubt may still visit from time to time, yet beneath all of it exists a steady current carrying you forward. This current is not pressure, it is not force, it is not control, it is alignment. The reality that once existed only as potential begins transitioning into lived experience. The future that was forming behind the scenes starts expressing itself through tangible events. And the more you cooperate with this movement rather than resist it, the more naturally life seems to unfold. Effort remains, but struggle decreases. Action remains, but friction lessens. The path begins supporting you because you are finally moving in harmony with it. As this alignment strengthens, communication from the universe becomes increasingly difficult to overlook. Experiences that once seemed isolated start appearing as connected messages. Repeating patterns emerge with unusual consistency. Synchronicities become more frequent. Timing becomes almost impossibly precise. You think about something and encounter a reflection of it moments later. A message appears through multiple unrelated sources. A conversation unexpectedly provides the exact insight you needed. Certain encounters feel orchestrated rather than accidental. Certain events arrive with a level of precision that challenges ordinary explanation. What once seemed like coincidence begins feeling like confirmation. And as these signs continue multiplying around you, a deeper understanding starts preparing itself to emerge, revealing that the relationship between your inner transformation and the reality unfolding around you is far more connected than you once imagined.